The Phantom of Blackwood Manor. In the heart of the English countryside, nestled among ancient oaks and dense fog, stood Blackwood Manor. For centuries, it had been abandoned, left to the encroaching wilderness and the whispers of the locals. They spoke of curses, of ghosts, and of an eerie darkness that seemed to linger, even on the brightest days. Despite these warnings, the new owner, Thomas Caldwell, was undeterred. An ambitious architect with a fascination for restoring historical buildings, he saw potential where others saw only fear. Thomas arrived at Blackwood Manor on a dreary afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the Gothic structure. As he approached the grand yet decaying entrance, a chill ran down his spine. The air felt thick, almost unwelcoming. Ignoring the creeping sense of dread, he pushed open the heavy wooden door, its rusty hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of dark corridors and empty rooms, each one echoing with the faintest whispers of the past. Dust motes danced in the feeble light, filtering through the grimy windows, and the air smelled of mildew and age. Thomas set up his temporary quarters in what must have once been the grand parlor, planning to start his restoration work the next morning. As night fell, the house seemed to come alive. The once quiet halls were now filled with eerie creaks and groans, as if the manor itself was breathing. Thomas shrugged off the unsettling sounds, attributing them to the old building settling. Exhausted, he drifted into a restless sleep. He awoke to a blood-curdling scream. Bolting upright, Thomas listened intently, but the house had fallen silent once more. Dismissing it as a nightmare, he tried to return to sleep, but the oppressive darkness seemed to press in on him, making it impossible to relax. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The next day, Thomas began his work. As he explored the manor, he found peculiar things. An old portrait of a woman with piercing eyes, a dusty music box that played a hauntingly familiar tune, and most unsettlingly, a room that seemed to have been untouched by time. It was a child's room, complete with toys, a small bed, and a dollhouse. The air in the room was cold, and Thomas could swear he heard faint laughter. That night, the nightmares returned. He dreamt of the woman from the portrait, her eyes filled with sorrow and rage. She reached out to him, her fingers cold and ghostly, and whispered, "Leave this place." Thomas woke up in a cold sweat, the echo of her voice lingering in his mind. Determined to uncover the truth, he began researching the history of Blackwood Manor. He discovered that the manor had once belonged to the Blackwood family, who had mysteriously disappeared over a century ago. Rumors spoke of dark rituals and a curse placed upon the family. The woman in the portrait was Lady Eleanor Blackwood, who was said to have gone mad after the death of her young daughter, Emily. Some believe that Eleanor had sacrificed Emily in a desperate attempt to bring back her deceased husband, and the manor had been cursed ever since. As the days passed, Thomas's encounters with the supernatural grew more frequent. He heard whispers in the halls, saw fleeting shadows in the corners of his eyes, and felt an ever-growing sense of dread. One night, while working late, he heard the unmistakable sound of a child's laughter coming from the direction of the child's room. Heart pounding, he followed the sound. The room was exactly as he had left it, but the dollhouse was now open, its tiny rooms eerily mirroring the manor. Inside the dollhouse, he saw miniature figures: a woman, a man, and a child. The figures were moving on their own, reenacting scenes of a happy family life. Then abruptly, the scene changed. The figures of the man and child disappeared, and the woman's figure was alone, her expression one of utter despair. Suddenly, the air grew cold, and Thomas felt a presence behind him. Turning slowly, he saw Lady Eleanor standing in the doorway, her eyes hollow and her face twisted in sorrow. "Leave this place," she whispered, her voice filled with anguish. "Save yourself." Terrified, Thomas fled the room, but the haunting continued. The manor seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and the once grand halls now felt like a sinister maze. Determined to escape, Thomas gathered his belongings and made his way to the front door, but it wouldn't budge. Desperate, he ran to the nearest window, but as he reached it, he felt a cold hand on his shoulder. "Stay with us," a child's voice whispered. Thomas turned to see the ghostly figure of Emily, her eyes wide with fear. "She won't let you leave." In a final, desperate attempt, Thomas closed his eyes and began to pray. When he opened them, the spirits were gone, and the door swung open effortlessly. He fled into the night, vowing never to return. Blackwood Manor still stands, its dark history etched into its walls. Locals say the curse remains, and the ghosts of the Blackwood family continue to haunt its halls, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to enter their haunted abode.